What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for clicking on the clip. If this is your first time here and you're one of those 80% that haven't been here before, welcome. This video is a little bit different than the Atypical Sawyer Custom video. The Atypical Sawyer Custom video is riding, building, doing all kinds of stuff like that in the shop or outside in the track, at the motocross track, wherever. That's the Atypical video. But this is also a custom speed shop. And I grew up in the automotive industry. I've seen a lot of stuff changing after, the whole vid thing and parts production's kind of going down to nothing and the ripple effects after that. We've got another thing going on here that's kind of critical to our economy and the future. The United Auto Workers Union is on strike, and they're asking for a 44% increase in pay wages for people that are already getting $30 an hour. Some are getting $17, but that's starting wages is typical. We'll show you some numbers here coming up. I've got numbers from what the union officials and leaders and stuff have pay scales, what the regular workers get, typical workers. We've got numbers for how many people are actually on strike versus how many people are actually working in the facility. It seems that only certain areas of the facilities are shutting down, and ironically, they're key parts producer areas. So if a door needs little inserts to be stamped and you can't get the little inserts, then the door can't be stamped. It's pretty much that simple. Kind of like how we had the chip shortage a couple of years ago. Well, we're going to run into the big three having a car shortage and a parts shortage here coming up, because the ripple effect of this is all going to depend on how long they hold out. Now, when I joined the IBEW, which is electrical workers, I had to sign a no strike clause. So the strike thing has me a little curious. I got to see how the union was run and how things were going from the inside as a union member, and if you can't tell, I'm not in the union anymore. There's reasons for that, and I won't get into that, but a lot of it had to do with the politics behind unions, and it really raises a lot of red flags. So now we've got a major union shutting down our big three so that they can get some astronomical number when the union leaders are already making well over six figures a year. The leaders, not the people working, but the people that are actually running the union. I'll show you the list. The list is insane. I about fell over when I saw it. So we're going to go over some news videos that I found going over the actual strike, what it's doing, what's going on, and we'll do a reaction to the news videos and a little bit of my thoughts during the videos, after the videos. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of interesting content coming up. Also, I've got a video for EVs versus gas cars, because I'm seeing a lot of contradicting numbers when it comes to how efficient they are to be produced versus how efficient they are in use, and average use versus projected use, which the projected use is actually out of the ballpark and doesn't really make any sense to me. So that's going to be another video coming up in the future. So make sure, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Throw a comment in there. Tell me what you think of this video and what's going on and how you think it might actually affect our future, because this is the future of the nation going on here. When the major three have a hiccup, it ripple effects through the entire economy and the entire country. And with California pushing EVs without a stable power source, we got problems coming up. So check this out. Hope you enjoy it. Hit that like button at least. And here we go. That's fine.
Now we got breaking news related to that United Auto Workers strike.
All right, the first one we got going on here is CNBC.
John Ford has just announced that it is laying off approximately 600 workers at its Michigan assembly plant. That is the plant where one of the UAW strikes is taking place. We should point out that that strike does not shut down the entire plant. There is still body construction and stamping work that is going on there. But because those employees need some of the parts that the UAW works with and provides to the stamping operation, the body construction operation, and they cannot do that, Ford says it has no choice but to tell those workers they are now laid off. So this is the knock-on effect that we've talked about, John, that when you see these strikes begin, you will see
and as the departments close down, it's going to be more layoffs because they don't have parts
related to that plant where a strike is taking place, or elsewhere within the automaker and their entire network of operations. So again, Ford laying off approximately 600 workers at its Michigan assembly plant just outside of Detroit. John, I'll send it back to you.
Phil, should we think of this as a temporary layoff and as part of this negotiation of saying, hey, there's a real impact to these work stoppages, or no?
No, I would not consider this as a temporary situation. I would consider, look, it's as long as the strike goes on. They cannot do their work. And if you are Ford, if you are GM, if you are Stellantis, if you have workers who cannot do their work because the strike is stopping the flow of parts or whatever might need to take place, you have no choice but to lay them off. We've seen this in past strikes. And so for the 600 workers who are laid off, basically this goes as long as the strike goes.
Okay, that's what I meant in a sense. So yeah, they're saying that we're not going to carry these additional costs. Should we expect to see some similar moves from the other two automakers?
Potentially. They're going to do it if there's a facility that cannot operate because of a strike.
Do we usually see it this quick?
Oh, yeah. They don't drag their feet. Higher ups are definitely going to do what they have to.
It all depends on when a strike takes place, where it is at, and how that facility is tied in with the rest of the automaker. Look, we're in a world of just-in-time manufacturing, John. So it's not like you can have workers sitting around. The flow of parts has been stopped at these three plants. And the final assembly has been stopped at these three plants. These are some of the knock-on effects that you're going to see from that.
What do we got? Fox.
As United Auto Workers Union plans to resume talks with the big three Detroit automakers today, President Biden continues to weigh in on the strike, claiming profits have not been split fairly among workers.
Auto companies have seen record profits, including in the last few years, because of the extraordinary skill and sacrifices of the UAW workers. But those record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they help create for an enterprise.
He should have no say in this.
Joining us now to discuss is former Chrysler and Home Depot chairman and CEO Bob Nardelli. Bob, great to have you on the program this morning. As you look at what's happening right now with the big three automakers and the UAW, does President Biden have the diagnosis right? It's simply that profits have not been shared.
Yeah, well, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity. No, it's absolutely not correct, Will. I'd share some points with you, and you and Pete have walked the wall and talked about this numerous times. I mean, how did we get to this point where household income is not keeping up with inflation? And I understand that, and I support the need for, making that right, whether it's cost of living or what have you. But how did we get here? Inflation, right? So energy's up 40%. What caused that? Well, day one of this administration, they surrendered energy independence. This is the same administration that's forcing the auto companies to advance electric vehicles. Ford, my good friend Jim Farley, they've lost $6 billion in the last 2 years relative to EV. They just got a $9.2 billion grant to build a battery plant in Michigan. That's proof positive that Ford is not trying to punish the UAW workers, right? So a lot of this is self-inflicted. I'm very glad to hear that they're going to sit down and try to negotiate, because this negotiation, Will, has become very, very polarized. It started with 46% wage increase, 40, now 36. It's 18% in the first year alone, right? What I think about overreaching is getting paid 40 hours for 32 hours a week. Right. Technology has advanced, but I don't know how you make a car when you don't have workers there on Friday.
Right.
If you look at the pension program, again, another overreach. It's just impossible to step back and repay people that have lost pension, since 07, 8, and 9. Most companies today are having to abandon the pension program because of the major cost of health care. So those are the two things I think are overreaching. I understand household income needs to keep up with inflation, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the workers have a point with the rate of inflation. They have to see commensurate raise in wages to keep up with the cost of living. On the other hand, the automakers can't lose money on EVs and expect to give raises to the workers. You're in a bit of an impasse. Take a look at this is the projection of the financial implications of a 10-day strike. Ford, $1.5 billion in losses. GM about the same.
How are they getting record
to the consumer, right? I don't know how long it would take, but if we have a slowdown in production and we have a restriction in supply, prices of cars go up.
Yeah. Well, Will, let me say this. I lived through this in 07, 8, and 9 with Chrysler, and those estimates are woefully short of the impact. United Auto Workers in the auto industry has a very broad and deep set of tentacles that goes into this economy. Just think about this. So for every one UAW worker, my recollection is about 10 workers that support that. So we're talking about 1.4 million potential workers that will be impacted from tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
That's insane.
Now let's think about all the dealerships that are out there that are going to be impacted. What do they do, Will? They start to raise prices on their inventory because they're going to run short, and they try to get enough cash to make it through this dip and this strike.
Right.
So this woefully underestimating, and it has a globality effect. And the timing on this, Will, look, I understand the UAW handed in line, right? UPS, American Airlines, the dock workers, it's their turn. And this is all the result of this administration forcing the impact on these household incomes not to keep up with their administrative costs.
What a cycle, right? Forced policies, inflation, strikes, more inflation. What a spiral of economic activity. Bob Nardelli, your
buddy of mine was saying how Chrysler's getting fined for having too much horsepower in their Hellcats, and they're getting fined per vehicle. I haven't looked that up, but that's just, why are the muscle cars going away? Because they're getting pushed away. It's going to cost money to build them. The customer's not going to absorb that. Oh, jeez. This is insane, people. The ripple effect of this is going to be huge. All right, Channel 4 in Detroit. That's
and the UAW continues striking the Detroit 3 automakers across the country this morning.
Union leaders have rejected Stellantis' most recent proposal, but Stellantis saying in a statement yesterday the UAW has decided to, quote, publicly misrepresent key elements of its offer. And one of those key elements are plans to close 18 facilities. A statement Stellantis says is misleading without context. The automaker says it plans to invest in electric vehicle plants and hopes to preserve those jobs. For now, workers take to the picket lines. Mara McDonald is here to tell us what we can expect today.
They're calling it Solidarity Sunday. Expect to see a big presence out here on one of the main focuses of the picket line. Meanwhile, UAW Chief Shawn Fain has some appearances on the Sunday shows. If Thursday and Friday at Ford's Michigan Assembly were all adrenaline, now it's optimism. As UAW members ease into the picketing rotation and bring reinforcements like Gizmo.
Definitely happy to be out here to supporting our UAW family, so it gets no better than this.
The UAW sat down with Ford, and union sources described the talks as reasonably productive. Workers walking the picket line universally tell me they don't think this strike will last long, but if it does...
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Ford says due to the strike at paint and final assembly at the Michigan Assembly Plant, or MAP as it's called, it had to send home 600 workers on layoff because there was nothing for them to do. This as Stellantis laid out the details of its offer, which it says the UAW, at least in some respects, misrepresented. It includes a 21% pay hike, boosting temp pay up to $20 an hour, and ending tiers at Mopar and halving its current progression to top scale to 4 years instead of 8. All three automakers are offering similar packages, which include up to 5 weeks of vacation, profit sharing, and no premiums for health care. What? All deals the UAW has turned down. Now, bargaining is expected to continue into next week, but there's something to be on the lookout for. Yes, the UAW is striking all 3 Detroit automakers, but currently it's only picketing 3 plants, including one here in Michigan, which is here in Wayne. Now, Shawn Fain has said if those negotiations don't go the way they think they should, well, you can expect to see more plants added to that list.
All right, here's the numbers of the UAW people. How much money they're making. They've got additional income, probably side hustles. I mean, you scroll quite a while before you hit a 5-figure income. And those people are all paid off of dues. So all the members that pay into the union are paying these people's salaries. And these people are the ones that set what the union dues are. So they can at any point in time raise their fees to be a member of the union so that they can get more money in their pocket. Oh, it's a big power play. Forcing companies to do stuff that they're not going to do. This is going to really, really, really negatively affect things. That's for sure. All right. This is average assembly worker earns $32.32 an hour. Temp worker earns 17. They said they were bumping it to 20. That's fair. 400,000 active UAW workers. It was founded in Detroit in 1935, right before child labor laws in 1938. So yeah, for 3 years, kids were working in factories.
Joining us today, former Ford CEO and CNBC contributor Mark Fields. Mark, it's great to have you. I do wonder, to Phil's point about, on the one hand, I guess it is targeted. On the other hand, it is all 3. Do you see this as sort of a jab in boxing terms?
Well, listen, it's unprecedented that they're hitting all the Detroit 3 at the same time. I mean, the union's been around for 88 years, and the new union leader, Shawn Fain, wants to show a break from the past. You know, I think, listen, at the end of the day, Fain wants to demonstrate the power of the strike and the ability to use it.
12,700 employees.
And it's meant to spur negotiations, as Phil was saying. It's meant to accelerate them rather than paralyze the company. So as they see progress or not, they may decide to go after some other plants, but not paralyze the entire company. And it has the benefit also, they don't have to deplete their strike fund by having all their employees across the plants go out on strike.
So do you think so-called paralysis or forced paralysis is off the table from the union standpoint? And do you, on the other side, see any sort of broad measures to export production in retaliation is also off the table from the D3 side?
Well, I think that's a longer term issue, depending upon
and they know this.
What they end up
agreeing
to in this negotiation. I think, you know, Carl, at the end of the day, I think the unions, they're most focused on the wage increases. So I think the Detroit 3 are going to be focused on that, and the proposals they put on the table, they may have to move those up. The union's going to be focused on this Tier 2 acceleration of workers that get to what they call Tier 1 status or full pay status. And the union's going to focus on temporaries and limiting those at plants. You know, I don't think at the end of the day, on the OEM side, they're going to be focusing on just keeping both themselves and the UAW at the negotiating table, keep communicating, bringing proposals back and forth. The automakers also have to keep in mind, what is the victory speech for the union head when they get a tentative agreement? Because ultimately, that has to be ratified. And if it goes extended, to your point, Carl, I mean, listen, there's, actions that some of the OEMs could take on potentially, shutting down plants, not a lockout, but, saying it's a part shortage. But your point about moving products and plants out of the country, that's going to come down to if the OEMs are forced for some of these non-wage demands such as pensions and healthcare improvements, et cetera, then the OEMs are going to be very rational about it. They're going to look at their competitiveness, and if they can't be competitive in the U.S., they're going to have to move somewhere where they can be.
Well, Mark, I mean, you know the cost structure of Ford, certainly, and probably have a good guess at the others. What can they really take here in terms of not just the wage increase, but the overall compensation when you include the benefits you were describing?
Well, yeah, David, it's a little bit of a moving target, right? Because traditionally, the automakers, the Detroit Three, were competing against the import brands, which are non-union. And right now, all-in wages for the Detroit Three are about $65 an hour versus $55 at the non-union plants. So any movement upwards is going to increase their competitive gap. Then you lay over Tesla, which, you know, the last contract they weren't a player. Now they're a major player.
Oh,
and, you know, their wage rates are about $45. So in terms of what they can take, listen, the automakers can't, you know, plead poverty because they've had, you know, very good the last 3 years profitabilities and margins because of COVID and a number of other things. So they're going to have to increase their costs. The key is to do it in a way that doesn't add even more structural costs, which would accelerate that gap versus the competition.
Hey, yay. So, yeah, we, kind of ripple effects you guys think is really going to happen? I know automotive industry's always been kind of one of those things. It's had its ups and downs, and how bad do you think this is going to affect things? Hoping not too bad, but between the EV mandates and stuff that are coming up and the power grid instability and a lot of other stuff going on at this point in time, we don't need this on our back, but we got this on our back. So here we are. What do you guys think about it? Let me know. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. See ya. Peace.
The big three automakers all releasing statements with similar messaging today. Stellantis says it was extremely disappointed by the UAW leadership's refusal to engage in a responsible manner to reach a fair agreement. GM says, quote, "We are disappointed by the UAW leadership's actions despite the unprecedented economic package GM put on the table." And Ford said the UAW didn't get a real counterproposal to them until just a few hours before last night's deadline. To see all our coverage on negotiations and this strike, just head to WTOL.com, and you can get minute-by-minute updates sent right to your phone with the WTOL 11 app.